Thank you for coming. So today we've got Francesca Pigatto, who's going to be talking about cumulative risk scores for depressive symptoms in young people from the Growing Up in New Zealand longitudinal study. And Francesca is doing a PhD on the environmental risk factors and genetic markers for depression symptoms in young people enrolled in the Growing Up in New Zealand longitudinal study. She's a full-time PhD student, and she's got a background in clinical genetics and an interest in public health.
Thank you, Lisa. Very to be here, and really I thank you for this opportunity to present the result of my PhD. So, why doing research in depression in adolescents? Because the background is that this condition are increased drastically worldwide from 8 to 50% in the last decades. There have been shows that 1 in 6 adolescents have been reported depression symptoms. And it's so important to focus in adolescents because this is a time where often the symptoms occur and tend to persist later on in life with association with other mental health conditions, anxiety, suicide, alcohol dependency. So my rationale of my thesis is that we know that children are more often exposed to a constellation of risk factors rather than a single one. And the number of risk factors that a child is exposed, bigger number is a number of risk factors, higher is the risk to have mental health problems such as depression. And although there is already a large body of evidence about many risk factors associated with depression, most of the research has been focused on specific risk factors and in a particular time. And there is a bit lack of understanding which is the effect on depression of combined risk factors. So I'm going to describe the methods that my outcome is depression symptoms are 12 years. And this is our data for Grow Up in New Zealand. I really don't think I spend the time now to explain what is this, the bigger contemporary longitudinal studies that you already know. And we use the well-known scales of 10 questions. The exposure are exposure risk factor select from prenatal, 9 months, for half years, 8 years. And for my analysis, the sample include about a bit over 4,000 young people who really complete the questionnaire, and also we have data on prenatal maternal depression. We represent about 64% of the full cohort. And I'm using cumulative risk score as an approach to evaluate the effect of multiple risk factors on depression. And I'm more specific using a cumulative risk score because what I want really to account is a number of risk factors, not just a cumulative score. And then in the analysis, how we adjust for covariance. I'm using cumulative score because it's been a useful method to assess risk factor, but to use this method, you need to have binary risk factor. So each risk factor have to be combined in present or no present risk factor. So if I have a continuous risk factor, I use a cutoff. If I have categorical, many category risk factor, I combine in one binary. And then once I have all risk factors that are binary, I'm going to show you how I analyze in univariate analysis to understand which were what statistical significance associated. At the end, all the risk factors, they are binary, are combined in one score, which represent a quantitative measure of how many risk factors a person has experienced in her life. Each risk factor will be really have a 3 category of risk: low, medium, and high that we described. This is a distribution of the depression score in our cohort. We know that the score starts from 0, no risk, up to 30, and the mean that we have is 8. You see, is not is a right skewed distribution. This is a association between depression score, and we have the distribution and the descriptive analysis, but also the association between considers the different covariants. And as we expect, we know that if you are female, you are just increased risk, because usually really adolescents, girls are really double the risk of boys. And if we consider ethnicity, Maori and Pacific tend to have a bit higher risk, while you can see the coefficient, but that's a statistical significance. What is statistical significance apart being female is having higher maternal education, increase so is protective from depression score, and if the mother reported unplanned pregnancy, increase risk. So means that because unplanned pregnancy is related to sometimes socioeconomical deprivation, low education. There are all the factors associated with having a unplanned pregnancy. Also, sometimes they find that unplanned pregnancy are increased risk of mother having depression, and for example, using, for example, folic acid to reduce a pregnancy. My research really is divided into papers. What I show you, what was a part was in common, because the outcome is a covariance. But now I'm going to discuss which is really the cumulative risk score that has been calculated only considering the perinatal risk factor. And this is a list of perinatal risk factors that I select from the dataset grown up in New Zealand to study the association with depression score at age 12. I consider, if you click, I don't know if you can move this, but you consider prenatal and postnatal, and then I combine together. So in prenatal is maternal smoking, drinking, folic acid. Also, I would want to consider the birth weight, gestational age, feeding, and what we always know is important of depression and anxiety in father and mother during and after, soon after the pregnancy. Then I consider also in intimate partner aggression, that means really verbal or physical conflict between couple, and I consider also residential mobility at 9 months. And this is a table where I summarize the risk factor which show to be statistically significant associated with my outcome as is depression. These are the risk factors that have been selected to be included in the community score, because we can include the community score only the risk factor that show statistically significant association with my outcome. And really, this is a consistency result of risk factor identified as associated with my outcome. This consistent with really a wide number of nature charts. So we know smoking, consumer alcohol, what is very important, depression and anxiety, prenatal, but also in postnatal. And I found association with intimate partner aggression. And I calculated also material hardship. Material hardship is like a marker for low socioeconomic deprivation. And then I found association also with gender mobility, in particular. Only the significance was when there was more than 4 times moving free since pregnancy. No, it's very really just 0.3, no, but high as other, but still statistically significant to consider to include in my cumulative score. I don't want to go in details too many, but this is too many names and numbers, but I want just to present a list of variables which I had to exclude from my cumulative score because didn't reach statistical significance. Folliaxic, for example, strange, was found associated in the previous study with depression at 8 years. Really, when I did this analysis at 8 years, I found association, but not at 12. Low small baby of preterm baby didn't find association, but really, if you look at the literature, there is also some conflicting result on that. Paternal depression didn't reach statistical significance. I wanted to make you notice that really there is very large number of missing data because in our database, the original database doesn't have many information about the data collected from partners or fathers. And they didn't find association with breastfeeding. So if you go back to the 9 variables which are selected to be included in the cumulative score, I presented this box plot to compare the association between the number of risk factors that adolescent has been exposed and the depression score. And this regression analysis allowed me to make decisions about how to make the category of risk. And because there's not much difference between no risk and 1 risk, I decided the low cumulative score represent adolescents, young people who were exposed to no risk factor 1. Then the second group, medium cumulative score, represent individuals who were exposed to 2 and 3, and the higher risk factor 2 more than 4. And really, in the literature, what we all agree is that exposure to more risk factor is considered a high risk. More is a higher risk. So, and this represent you can see that about 0.5% of our population, our study, had 0 or 1 risk factor, about 1/3, 2 or 3, and 12% more than 4. Again, it's very similar for what do we know from the literature. Okay, but we talk about 12, 16, the people, the risk of the proportion of individuals exposed to more than 4 risk factors. And we can see how the mean depression increased from 8.1 to almost 10. And what is important here to see how the coefficient. So if you are exposed to a medium risk factor, you have increased 0.4 unit in the depression score. But if you have a high risk, you can see that increase 1.6 unit, and of a very strong significance. Then I do analysis considering the covariance that I showed before. I want to just show you what to say, or the association between cumulative scores, the 3 categories I show you, and depression still stays statistically significant for medium and high. What we found, being female is again important factor. of increased risk, and the other risk we lose the significant when we consider unplanned pregnancy, but still is significant that having a mother with, in this case, very high education level reduce its protective factor for depressions. For all really the factors are related to higher maternal education. Then the second research is considering now not anymore the perinatal, but the early childhood risk factor with the same methods. Okay. Really, in early childhood, really we can really interchange the terminology early risk factor, early childhood risk factor with adverse child experience, because adverse child experience are a significant risk factor where really combine a broad range of potential stressful dramatic events. So I think really we have to know, so maybe at the end your feedback, but I think they are very two interchangeable terminology. And what we know that there are so many papers on ACE that shows it's how much high prevalent, but how much is this occurs. So when you have a early childhood risk factor, you are most likely to have the others. It seems this is giving me more background that I needed to consider the effect, the combined effect. And we know that experience increased risk of adolescence, but what is very important again here is a dose response. For give you some result of some meta-analysis. If you have one risk factor, you have a ratio 2 twice. For 4 risk factor, I found a meta-analysis that put really a ratio even 10, other 4. So means really what is important is that it's not only that children are more likely to have a more risk factor, but they don't respond is relevant. This is the reason why I think cumulative risk score is a good methodology. This is a risk, I don't know, of a risk or early childhood risk factors that I selected for the data set, maternal mental health, depression, anxiety, 4 years, 8 years. I didn't have information by paternal, interparental conflict. And in this case, I put also together children who were exposed to conflict, and they put make a single variable because I think it makes sense. And then parental style, I select a question which represents a more authoritarian punishment parental style. I use also, I want to consider some maternal drinking, just because maternal drinking has been really strongly associated with children with depression, because it is linked to many other family problems. It can be also considered a specific part of maternal hardship, because they are really a bit related. So maternal hardship represent, you know, not only represent drinking problem, also could also represent house instability. But then peer relationship was that collect 8 years. The use of screen time and social media, I use more screen time because the variable are more accurate, and it was easier to really to make binary, and I use more than 14 hours, like higher risk for using and consider the guidelines of normal 2 hours a day. And then I consider this information about adverse event like parental separation, death of the parents, or one in prison. Also, there was a question about severe child illness injury. But this question was collected 8 years, but could happen at any time before. But again, covered in any way my early childhood time. Maybe others really like horizontal mobility is more specific, 4 years and 8 years. So 8 years represent mobility since the previous data collected waves. So as before, I want to show you which are really the risk factors that binary big factors associated with my outcome. Is depression of the mother 4 years, 8 years, even anxiety years, peer relationship that we know that is very strong associated, parental separation, the negative parenting style at 8 years. For some reason, didn't find associated at 4 years. I don't know really if how I combine the value, because the question is a bit different. But I wanted to notice that the negative parenting style was significant at 8 years, but not at 4 years. Maternal hardship strongly associated both at 4 years, 8 years, and if you remember, also in perinatal. I just so this is sorry mistake here, it's not here. What was not associated was interpaternal aggression, parental style at 4 years, drinking problem, so this is a mistake. So screen time, illness was not associated, parental increase or death again was not associated, and not even residential mobility. I have to say, when you consider variable like parents in prison of death, we are talking a very, very, very small number, so maybe it's not very powerful. So like being reporting really 10 out of 4,000. So maybe it's because really still rare for our court sample. I use here the same way to create the 3 category, and you can see also here that it's reasonable when you see the regression analysis, it's reasonable to combine no risk with 1 risk, because then there's a big gap, we say later. And so I use the same 3 category as I use in perinatal. It's very similar that like in the perinatal, but I have that a bit 1/3 are exposed to 2 or 3, a bit smaller proportion of high risk compared to the other. But then we have a table where really I make a comparison of all together, so you can see what you can. I want to make really highlight here that if you are exposed to 2 or 3, you have estimate almost 1. But if you have exposed to 4 or more of risk factor, you have a 2.4 increase unit of depression score, quite high. I don't want to go into detail in this table represented the multi-regression analysis, but I wanted to start to show you is the same trend we found. Female increase and being higher education protect absolutely the same trend that we see in perinatal. That really is good to have really consistency. This table for me wanted a bit compare different things, prevalence, mean depression score, and estimate in prenatal and in early childhood. What I already make you notice that really maybe half, 1/3, sorry, of our cohort are exposed to medium risk factor in both times. But when you consider a high risk factor, a high cumulative score more than 4, we have a small proportion in early childhood at perinatal. But even these numbers, the proportion, the prevalence of high cumulative score is lower in early childhood in comparison to perinatal. When you consider estimate, is much higher. So it means that even the proportion of young people exposed to more of risk factor are lower in comparison to perinatal, the association And the increase of cumulative score is much higher because estimate is 1.4 in the other two. So I wanted to, doesn't mean because we have risk factors association, the risk is much higher. I think because of my interpretation, the risk factors that I consider in perinatal are very close to the outcome. In some way, maybe early, bullings or having the mom depressed at 4 years give you more risk of depression than in perinatal in comparison. So I think really, I expect that have a bigger effect, impact on depression for the timing. This is my interpretation. Even the difference in mean depression is higher in early childhood, in perinatal childhood, if you consider this really high risk. So this is very consistent. So what is really to summarize the result? Well, for me, it says that really 1/3 of our core children are exposed to 2 or 3 risk factors. This number is enough to be associated with depression. But if you are exposed to high cumulative score, more than 4, you have the highest risk of reporting depression. In particular, I will say here, if you consider early childhood risk factor. And as a hand for me is this cumulative score is a really useful approach to use a predictive tool to predict who can be at increased risk of depression. And this is relevant because we can really inform public health interventions that we need to maybe focus in early intervention which address a number of risk factors, not one single one, because this is the only way to prevent this condition. A big thank you to Karen. This is my main supervisor. Of course, has been really have the feedback from Lisa, from Cameron, so all team. But I mention you because you are my leader. Okay.
So you're looking at depression at age 12. I'm just wondering how many of the cohort have been through puberty at that stage, and whether there's a difference in depression amongst those who have and those who haven't. Particularly amongst girls, yeah. I'm thinking. Do you know how many went through puberty?
I can say only one thing. So when I analyzed depression at 8 years, because I did the same analysis in 8 years, covariance, so the sex was not a covariant reached statistical significance.
No.
But at 12, so it means that, which is different about 8, but 12, for between 12, maybe many went to the puberty. So I think this really was for me a sign. So don't know if I.
No, that sits with the literature, I think.
Yeah.
The sex differences.
Yeah, it was not related. But in fact, in depression anyway, the difference in prevalence happened in adolescents no earlier. So 8 years was maybe too early to see a difference in sex, that because we really this is not puberty yet.
Is having a father with higher education also protective of children's depression, like having a mother with higher education?
A good question. Really, I don't know. I will check. Really, I think we have information about paternal education, but the problem is that considering maybe paternal data in our database is that my worry is that there will be many missing. If you consider maternal education, really maybe 1% didn't this missing data. I'm worried that if we can, when I put information about paternal education, there's a lot of missing. And then again, consider that maybe 20% of no, don't know which remember some people didn't have there was not really any relationship. So you have also consider that there is missing data because the data really are really missing in paternal information. And plus, not every, even the majority of mothers and partners is also possible didn't have a partner. So really, how we have a look to to get this information, but I'm worried it can be a bit less complete than considering maternal. My other idea is, of course, I've already compared most of also with depression at 8 years. Probably 8 years I can compare more with variable perinatal, but not much. You can't consider, of course, 8 years. So I can't really make the same computer score. What we know is a trend between being depressed at 8 years and at 12 years. The other things I would like maybe to consider is as an outcome, consider also anxiety. A other part of the research is really will be perfect to consider cumulative scores, individual genetic risk for each individual, to make a more accurate predictive score. So for me, the ideally predictive score should have really environmental risk factor from prenatal to early childhood combined with a polygenic risk score, which is individual risk score. And there will be, we never know which is really interaction between genetics and environment is still really not clear. So this will really tell you which is really a bit the other steps of the research. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just curious. What's the age of this cohort now?
Just 11 now, 13 maybe now. 12.
14, 15.
So, yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah. The 12 years data has been released only in January.
Oh,
so really, when I started to do my PhD, my outcome was 8 years. And then in January come up, I said, no, I have to do straight away this analysis. So, no, so, okay, of course, it will be good that, then you can do 16, or you can be later, but this is really the more really recent update. We don't have other data release. I don't know, Lisa, when we are going to release, maybe when is the children will be 14, I don't know. But look, this is very, and in any way, not because they're 14, it takes time to release because they do some statistical analysis. So even now they're 14, we don't know when we get really the data set able to do the analysis.
Yeah, 12 years from my stuff.
Exactly. So, so I now have these 2 publications that I hope to go, but we'd like, to have maybe your feedback in particular for the parental style, because parental style really is a big question that I select as a variable. So for me, more really associated with punitive behavior, authoritarian, but at the same time, it's also difficult to make them binary. Okay.
Well, I mean, part of the problem is the measures didn't actually measure parenting style, only parenting practices. And so there's different types of parenting practice that you can look at. I would be interested in whether it would be maternal warmth that had, did you look at that?
Yeah, but it's not too far away for my outcome. I don't know, I saw the parental style 4 years. But look, what
The 4-year measure didn't measure parenting style.
In fact, it's a problem that I could not compare the question at 8 years or 4 years. And for some reason, I find statistical significance at 8 years and not at 4 years, because maybe the questions are different. But if someone of them of you is expert in parental styles, that I'm not, I'm happy to give you, to see you face to face, to how I derive these values. This is the only variables I say, and I don't know why I didn't find surprising. I didn't find the association with intimate aggression, partner aggressions. That really means, and even the variable the question was about the child witness of verbal and physical conflict. Okay, so I was super surprised. Didn't find anything. I have to say there is a variable from the data set 8 years, asking, did as a child have any experience of parental conflict? So 8 years, again, one was a kind of group that represented any event before. And there was statistical significance. Why I didn't use it? Because I had so many other variables, so specific about verbal and the physical conflict. Plus, there was question about children witness of this. That I thought I expected to make a really big work on that and make this combined variable. But I really don't understand why I didn't find association with that. There was very specific question about conflict between parents, but a question asking a bit general, is any conflict, because it said I found statistical significance. So I can't include just because statistical significance. I needed to have a background, in particular when I have in the data set so many information. So maybe did the realist mother answer correctly? Wow. Because this is a kind of bias you want to, you want to underestimate this kind of behavior is not really positive. And so really, because how is possible one is strongly, I don't know. I think we know that when, there is self-reporting, you try to underestimate. It is the same in drinking, it's the same, and maybe overestimate really positive behavior.
Yeah, I think Amy Bird's done some work on the interparental conflict, and we.
I found that.
Yeah, and what we found is that perhaps mums who are in that situation, I can't remember what the associations were, but it does seem like maybe because they aware their children being exposed to that, they have higher levels of maternal warmth and things that might positively impact depression, so to kind of compensate for what their child is going through. So that's why I think looking at maternal warmth is very important, because we know that, and Amy's done a lot of work on this.
Okay, maybe I contact her.
Yeah, we know that. So I was wondering about what about the 2-year data, because we know that 2 years, that first 1,000 days is really important for later development, but I didn't see any 2 years.
No, look, because there was not any variable really that I analyze 2 years, but then analyze body mass index was not an association. There are really at 2 years, I look at all the information data set, I didn't find anyone really a risk factor. If when I went through,
yeah, I think there's a lot about parenting as to temperament. I think would be
the temperament. Okay, SDQ.
No, not temperament, not behavior. So
temperament. Yeah, but it's not like so much. Is really the problem is this considered risk factor or just a sign to be? Is a temporary risk factor? But I had this conversation with Amy. Yeah. Okay, no, because sorry, it was a long time ago. She said, no, you can't consider this risk factor. It's more considered really like SDQ, is a correlation. So really, this, no, because I'm not psychology, I'm not expert in anything of this, but I asked to her, and we had a meeting about that. She said, you can't consider risk factor.
So I wanted to ask you about that. How did you decide at the beginning?
Yes.
What would be a covariate and what would be part of the cumulative score? Because I can see some of those covariates, like unplanned pregnancy, you could consider that as part of the cumulative score. So how did you do that?
No, because when I look at the literature, this is the most rare common covariants. So and they are so linked to socioeconomical. So really, I'm sorry, I didn't read. Really, for my reading, they are really considered most of the time covariant, in particular planned pregnancies. Then planned pregnancy, for example, can be association of behavior like more likely maybe to drink, because we are not aware to get pregnant. But early education, I put also early maternal age is associated with low education, low income, more likely to have also anxiety during the pregnancy because of maybe young, unexpected, no support. Okay, no,
Yeah, I know.
So is it based on essentially what the child experiences?
no, but for me it's a really consider covariance. So the classical covariance, I can't consider risk factor. And they are all linked together.
Yeah.
And again, sorry. And I decide not using NZDEP because maybe this is a question, because I use a annual remover because all these are so much mark sign, a mark of, so was too much, was just really not giving, by look when I did analysis was stronger. So it just really was too much. And when I had a chat with Cameron, he said, no, you don't need to put also this one, you have this one as a represent. But the difference between, I don't know if I talk too much, between material hardship and that is different. The material is about really the individual.
Yeah.
So this have to be in the risk. So if someone asks me why I put, because I represent the difficult for the family to afford food, house, basic mental, medical service. So this can't be. So the difference that this is for the individual is that all the other NZDEP are more for the so, and I didn't put in the covariant because was too much really repeating the others, so was not. But if you say if I did an analysis, yes, strongly associated.
Yeah. My other thoughts were, just looking at this now, is 4 of those factors, variables that go into the cumulative score are related to maternal mental health. So you've got prenatal stress, prenatal depression, postnatal depression, postnatal anxiety. So within that cumulative score, half the variables are mental health variables. That seems like a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of collinearity
I was
there.
just going to say that.
But yes, but the same in Richardwood was stronger.
Yeah.
But it's okay, but because in childhood, I can information also about the child. So I can information about screen time, period.
So I'm talking about the perinatal.
Yeah, it's a perinatal, yeah.
So
But
so half of the cumulative scores are related to mental health, maternal mental health. That seems
So
a
is
lot.
I think Lisa's point might be that are you actually, rather than measuring cumulative risk, could it be that you're actually looking at exposure to mental illness?
Yeah.
That's driving the association rather than exposure to a range of risk factors. Yeah. But it might be worth looking at, I guess, the correlation, like how strongly correlated they are, and whether you.
well, see, yes, they are strong or correlated.
Yeah. So would it be better in that case to create like a combined?
No, I thought about that. I did also analysis combined, for example, we know depression and perceived stress are so much correlated. So I did also the analysis combining.
Right.
So I did. And I did also another one, combine, I call it this variable, maternal mental health. So I combine all of them. Yes, but the point is, this is also possible. It is a very correlated. Someone has or someone doesn't have it. So we wanted to make, okay, I think as a cumulative score make more sense also when you have really more risk factor. So I thought it was really to limit it to put really all in one. Okay, but I did the analysis putting all in one.
I don't know if you want to put just one, so you combine.
I combine. First of all, I combine depression and perceived stress. Then I made the other combined variable. I put depression, perceived stress, anxiety. So, but then, you know, just.
With the result, was there?
No,
was there different?
No, the association is the same. Of course, it's as you can expect.
But maybe the association is Does that mean actually what you're measuring with your cumulative score is a score of maternal mental health? That's more important than the other.
Higher proportion of perceived score
Yeah.
was 41% equal to depression. Of course, more. You know, I think it's more accurate to add, not make just one variable. Okay, anxiety was 10. So anxiety, how's it expected? Anxiety, prevalent anxiety and depression is very similar because really 30. No, anxiety I have only postnatal. I don't have but I compare in postnatal depression, anxiety. You know, there is a bit more anxiety. The prevalence 10% instead of 8%. I think really is a point. It's also a point, for example, to at a different time. For example, I'm material hardship. I also curiosity combine 8 years. Doesn't make sense. It's about if it's present at different times, more risk. Okay, because if it's present at 4, it's present at 8, increase. The same in prenatal. If the depression is present in during pregnancy, and later increase the risk. And plus, this is also anxiety even more. Okay, so this is the concept. More risk you add, higher is the consequence of your outcome.
But I wonder how many of those, how many, if you look at that, so you've got 8.8, I mean, I should know this because I analyze this data. Among the 359 women who had high, a lot of those women will also have high anxiety scores. So I think there's just some work to be done at looking at, is it the combination of depression and anxiety that's important, or is it, I don't know, what do you think, Steph? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, well, although you did say that if when you had it combined, I don't know, I think.
But you don't, but really at the same time, you don't know how many of people had depression, also high anxiety. They can imagine many, but don't really don't know. I think about reasonable to, you know.
You can look at it.
Yeah, but yes, it can be
You can do it.
I think they included maternal anxiety score, although I can't remember now. I think we included it in the prenatal, postnatal.
Anxiety.
Depression paper. It's always prenatal stress that comes out.
I think I'm not expert, but the perceived stress in some way. What is the perceived stress now? Is prevalence is very high. What is it now?
Yeah.
It's like 40.
Yeah.
So that's another, I won't call it an issue exactly, but it's contributing to your score. So if someone has perceived stress, or 40% of the population get a mark because of perceived stress, so they go up a point in the score. 50% of the population go up a point in the score because they've got material hardship, but only 1% go up because they've got residential mobility. So you've got a big range of things adding together, but they're not all contributing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think also, I don't know if we could consider, it's okay, we needed to make a cutoff, okay, of statistical significant level. But at the same time, really, my idea, I have to consider a different way, for example, residential mobility and alcohol using compared to the other, because you can see it's 0.3. And it's only, so you needed to have a statistical method, but at the same time, really my feeling is that, of course, maternal depression count much more residential mobility. And you can see that, for example, residential mobility disappear later on as association. And alcohol, I did a lot of analysis in alcohol, because if you look, there was a variable about if you consider just drinking or no drinking or any kind of drinking, you don't reach statistical significance. So means that they're only drinking more than 4. It's the same here. I think they are very wide variable. For me, these two are very.
It's always difficult.
Yeah, so yeah, you know, I'm very confident also because if I look at lecturer review on residential, sometimes can also really improve the really yeah. So in the same alcohol, you know, again reported a long time from my outcome. I really don't really.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. Looking at 0 drinking compared with 1 drink a week is like, but I do wonder about the 4 or more, just because all the public health information is that it's not heavy drinking that has an impact on children, it's low. So I would be tempted to, I don't know, because you've got to binarize it somehow, but
yeah, I use this cutoff of 4 or more because it was only because of only one cutoff for the statistical significance is the same for the data, because otherwise I don't find. Okay, so for me, really as a very weak variable, and I'm also, well, in fact, really the p-value is very low, and if you look also the estimate, so it can be discussed. Do you really want to put?
Thank you very much, Francesca, and thank you all for coming.